You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV, series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the second season premiere episode of Star Trek Enterprise called Shockwave Part 2. Part 2, The Quickening. No.
This time it's personal.
That's right. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Father Jason Tyler. Hey, Father.
Hello.
And Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, be sure to stick around to the end of the show. We have some more listener feedback, and we love to get your feedback, so please be sure to send it to us wherever you find us online, and especially to our email address, startrek@sqpn.com, or on YouTube. You can leave it on our YouTube channel with the video that you're watching now, and that's at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia. And be sure to share the podcast with your friends. Help us get this news out to other people that this show is here, and we're gathering a community of like-minded Star Trek fans to talk about all the great shows, old and new. So we are here to talk about the Shockwave Part 2. It's been a while since we talked about Shockwave Part 1. We talked about it. We recorded that one before Prodigy's final season and Lower Decks final season. So we're coming back to this now. It's been a while. But Jimmy, can you give us a recap of what happens in Part 2?
This week, the Enterprise is in a desperate fix coming off the heels of last season's finale. They've been blamed for destroying a colony of 3,600 people, and their mission has been canceled. T'Pol and Phlox are to be taken off the ship before it returns to Earth, but Silik and the Suliban have surrounded the ship, and Archer has been transported to the 30th century by the deceased crewman Daniels, only to discover a wasteland with no time machines to get them home. That's actually a summary of the previous season finale. Now, the Suliban board the ship, take control of it, and discover a temporal signature from when Archer vanished. So the crew of the Enterprise develop a take-back-the-ship conspiracy over the comm units while confined to their quarters. Meanwhile, in the 30th century, Daniels concludes that he created the apocalyptic future by pulling Archer out of time, so Archer must go back. Daniels uses Archer's communicator to jerry-rig a way to send at least messages through time, and Archer contacts T'Pol. Acting on instructions from Archer, she has the conspiracy retrieve a device from Daniels' quarters, and the conspiracy arranges for it to fall into Silik's hands. Malcolm lies and tells Silik that Archer ordered him to destroy the device, so Silik thinks it's key to getting into contact with Future Guy, who is currently AWOL due to the alteration in the timeline. While Silik is playing with the device on board a Suliban space station, the Enterprise crew fakes a warp core breach, leading the Suliban to quickly tow it away from the station. Silik activates the device, but instead of putting him back in touch with Future Guy, it creates a time portal that lets Archer come back from the 30th century. Archer takes Silik hostage. He orders that all Suliban ships be called off from pursuing Enterprise. He orders Silik to give him data tapes that will prove Enterprise didn't destroy the colony, and then he rejoins Enterprise. Afterwards, Starfleet, under Vulcan pressure, is still considering canceling the ship's mission, but Paul makes a pro-human speech, and afterwards, Starfleet decides to let the mission continue. The end.
Father, what'd you think of this one?
I thought it was an okay episode. Not really great, but not horrible necessarily either. I normally like time travel episodes, and I normally like the, hostile aliens have taken over the ship, and now we need some way to get it back, sort of thing. But neither of those elements really excited me, I guess, in this particular episode. But what I did find interesting really was the growth in the human Vulcan relationship here. And you have by this point, by the end of the episode, the Vulcans still want to recall Enterprise back to Earth, but the humans are ultimately going to say no. Paul stands up to defend the Enterprise and defend humans generally, and Archer is embracing and believing the idea of time travel, even as the Vulcan Science Directorate refuses to budge in their kind of disbelief of it. So, and that's one of the things I guess that I did like about Enterprise in general was the human-Vulcan relationship and how that developed, and seeing new angles on that we didn't see in some of the other series.
How about you, Jimmy?
Yeah, I thought it was okay. I had not been enthusiastic about this because I was confusing it with the season 4 opener, which is the one where it's another time travel plot, and you have angry, evil, reptilian, alien Nazis in it, and it's like, yuck. I mean, come on. Nazis are evil enough, you know.
Right.
This trope of having aliens pretending to be Nazis, it's like seen that,
Voyager.
done that, got the T-shirt. It's like, I don't need any more alien Nazis. The ones we had were bad enough. So I was thinking it was that one, and I was pleasantly surprised to find it wasn't. Now, I'm not a fan of the temporal Cold War. I like the concept, but they just never developed it properly on this show. But this is a decent, you know, exploration of some of the concept. And I particularly liked the conspiracy that the Enterprise crew members get up to. Some of the things they did, like there's this moment where their Trip is given an order by the Suliban to, like, I forget what, but like take these systems offline because we're taking over the ship or something. And he physically shoves a guy who's pointing a ray gun at him. And it's like, okay, this is just foolish bravado on the way Trip is being written. You're an idiot if someone's holding a gun on you and you push them. I mean, even by accident, their finger could depress the trigger. So that's just stupid. But then once they get in their quarters, once they're all put in their quarters and not allowed to go roaming around the ship, they develop this conspiracy over the comm units. Trip finds a way to hack through the different comm units to let them talk to each other without the Suliban knowing, I guess. And I was excited when I realized they're not telling us the plan. Instead, this is because if they tell you the plan, it's going to go wrong.
Right.
What is much more interesting is what they do on Mission Impossible, where they don't tell you the plan and you have to figure out what they're doing by watching them do it. And it's like, oh, great, this is a Mission Impossible plan. That is much more interesting. I mean, the others can be interesting, like in the Deep Space Nine episode where they take over Vic's casino after it's been commandeered by a Jack in the Box.
Right.
You know? And there they do tell us the plan, and you know it's going to go wrong, and then the fun is seeing how do they compensate given that the plan has gone wrong.
Right.
But it's also fun to just to not have that trope being used, and instead to see the plan unfold without being told what they're doing and have to figure it out from just the visual information on screen. And so I enjoyed that aspect of this.
Yeah. I agree, by the way, about Trip. That's in my notes too. I really dislike the way he's been written in this whole episode. His outbursts, his insubordination to Paul, his insubordination, like yelling at the Vulcan ambassador on the view screen at the end. It just
I noted that as well.
Yeah, it's awful. I mean, he's a jerk in this one, and
I mean, he's not Neelix level jerk, but he's a jerk.
No, right. And it's just like, why do you have to make Trip into this jerk? Like, cause he's usually, you know, he's usually speaks his mind, in episodes, and he has definite opinions about things, but you know, at times they make him do this, and it's infuriating.
It's because they've got, they have to have T'Pol be, Archer's not here. And they have to have T'Pol be the cool, calm leader. And so they need other characters to juice the drama.
Right.
And by making Trip an idiot and a jerk, they can juice the drama. What they should have done is pass that role on, if they're going to have it at all, which I would argue you don't need that. But if you're going to do that, it should be the lowest ranking crew people, rather than someone who is theoretically the second highest ranking officer on the ship.
Right. Really bad for discipline on the ship. You know, I feel like they're trying to emulate the original series where you had Spock and McCoy. And in fact, you even have the Southern accent and everything. But the reason it worked with McCoy is because he was, even though he's technically in the chain of command, but he's sort of outside the chain of command. So it would be equivalent to Phlox doing it, which Phlox would never do it because that's a whole different character. But because you have now the chief engineer doing it, it makes it difficult and it just feels wrong. So it's one criticism I have of this one. I agree. I like the conspiracy thing, the whole, let's retake the ship and not knowing exactly what the plan is. And, trying to figure out, okay, like he says to Malcolm at one point, Trip says to Malcolm, are you ready to go through this? It's going to get rough. And so when he gets beat up, you're going, oh, this is actually part of the plan, not the plan failing, but you don't know exactly what it is. And then sort of the reverse psychology on Silic with, don't use that device. I don't know what it's for, but I was supposed to destroy it in sort of, reversing it on the bad guy. I enjoyed that part of it. There are aspects though of this. I kind of at the end of the episode, I'm like, so is the 31st century restored? How exactly did this work? That he came back through a portal that was actually a communications system originally. A lot of that is sort of vague, and it's like they kind of wave their hand at it and don't pay too much attention to it. I feel like.
So the basic idea, as I understand it, from watching this episode, because I didn't go back and watch the previous one to see exactly what they had established in this, but what I got from watching this is Daniels pulled Archer out of the timeline at a crucial moment,
right?
And that ended up and took him to the 30th century, and that pulling him out at that moment stopped the foundation of the Federation, which led to the apocalyptic timeline that we see where the planet is a big ruin. And I assume they're on Earth there. But it looks like a big ruin. And so Archer has to go back, and using this device that I didn't look up to see, have they established this device before and what's it capable of? So I just assumed it's got time travel capabilities built into it.
Right.
But then by Archer going back, and that's also why Future Guy can't answer the phone.
He doesn't. He's not there anymore
because undermining the existence of the Federation means that Future Guy's timeline vanished.
Right.
And that's also hooked into the fact that they were originally thinking about, they hadn't settled on this, I don't think, but they were thinking about revealing Future Guy is Archer. He's an alternate version of Archer. But in any event, no Federation, no Future Guy timeline. And so the whole temporal Cold War has collapsed. And then when Archer comes back, it restarts. It restores the timeline. And so now the Federation is going to exist. Now the temporal Cold War is going to happen. Now the 30th century is not going to be a devastated wasteland and so forth.
It interests me, given, now with Discovery kind of extending that Daniels is... the guy from the 30th century in Discovery
Kovacs.
and Kovacs. That 30th century that he comes from is apparently the same. It's kind of interesting to me that you have this older guy that they're claiming to now be Kovacs. It's kind of I think they've kind of broken the continuity a bit. I think I have a hard time connecting this character with that character now, given what we see in this episode. Especially,
I think they even broke the continuity a little bit in this episode, because they say that Future Guy is from the 2700s, and they say that in the 2700s they didn't have the ability to send people back in time. They only had the ability to send messages back in time.
Right.
And it's like, really? I mean, we see them traveling in time in the 23rd century.
Right.
Exactly.
And they don't have it in the 27th. I mean, it's even back in the original series, Captain Kirk's doing logs saying, like, we've been sent back in time for a special mission to investigate historical realities in the 1960s and this proposed Doctor Who spinoff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's I think that is definitely a writing flaw, a mistake in the writing here, and I think it's a mistake to try to maybe connect us too closely to Discovery. So I won't bother trying to push that any further.
One criticism I had of this is, and this is really on the directorial side, and I don't normally criticize directorial stuff, but here it was just really problematic. So the conspiracy that they develop hinges on having one member of the crew who can physically get from location to location without the Suliban noticing.
Yeah.
And they come up with the idea of using some kind of sciencey access shafts that were primarily sealed up after Enterprise was finished, but a small enough person can get through them. So, of course, that's going to be Hoshi, who is, of course, claustrophobic. And okay, fine. But they say things like, Malcolm is talking to Trip about this, and he's saying, well, you or I couldn't get through, but Hoshi could. And then we see Hoshi going through these access tubes. And I'm sorry, but Malcolm and Trip could totally get through those.
Yeah.
They even show Hoshi crawling on her knees. And if she's got enough space to raise up her body to crawl on her knees, then yeah, someone slightly bigger than her could do this too.
Right.
But this is really, now you could blame that on set design, but they didn't. I don't think they designed these sets for this episode. I think they already had them. Or
yeah.
Even if they did design them for this episode, this is really a directorial choice, because they also show Hoshi flat on her back, scooching through, and they shoot her from above.
Right.
And they've got all this junk above her, and so you're looking down through the junk, seeing her. And when you use that shot, you have no clue how much space she has to maneuver in. So what if they're going to say these are too small for another person? They should have shot the whole thing of looking down through the junk, seeing Hoshi, so it does look claustrophobic.
Right.
They shouldn't have shown her side on crawling around on her knees.
Even have like sections where it's really constricted to get through, like that would make sense too. But yeah, you got to show the fact that she, that only she could do it. And of course, this being Enterprise and them resurrecting the spirit of Gene Roddenberry, they have to have her dropping out of the thing and having her shirt come off, which
I was going to mention that. Not a fan of that moment. We don't see anything, but we're meant to understand what happened. It's like, okay, guys, we don't.
It's unnecessary. Yeah. Well, that and and of course we're showing T'Pol writhing around in a small shirt. Like, come on, like we know what you're doing. This is the same as putting the antibacterial lotion on or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like we know what you're doing. So yeah, that's one of the bad parts of Enterprise. So Ambassador Saval shows up again, and
he's still a jerk at the moment.
He's so emotional. Like and the primary emotion being anger, but like this guy, like why is this guy ambassador to Earth? And it really feels like I don't get the logic of the why they want to suppress humans so bad. Like it just doesn't. It seems unreasonable. This, and I know again, as we were saying before, what they're trying to do is show the human Vulcan relationship at a different point in time. In all the series we've had so far, we've all been friends. Well, what about when we weren't friends? And so let's show that part. And I get that, but man, it just seems over the top. The disdain and contempt.
Well, this was a criticism of the series from the beginning. A lot of people, I think understandably, were not happy seeing, Vulcan human relations in this state. On the other hand, I understand what they were trying to do, and I think mileage will just vary for different people.
I guess I'd like to, to start out that way, but by the second season, maybe have progressed more. But I get the drama here is the Vulcans want to force the humans back to Earth at this point. Although I have a bigger conceptual problem, which is what exactly, like, why do the Vulcans get to tell humans what to do? Like, why is it the Vulcans can run around saying you have to cancel this mission? And who's running things on Earth?
Okay, so I would look at this as nation state diplomacy here on Earth. So the Vulcans can't tell what us humans what to do. They can advise and put pressure on humans for what to do. And that's essentially analogous to the United States. You know, the United States isn't going to tell England what to do. You must do this or we're going to bomb you. But the U.S. can advise England or any other nation about, what we'd like to see them do. And we could put economic pressure or things like that, or cooperate, okay, well, you're going to go a different path. We understand, but we're going to not cooperate on these intelligence ventures or whatever.
Tariffs, maybe.
Yeah. And we would at that point be viewed much as the Vulcans are being viewed. And, it's like, oh, okay, they're the big bullies who are currently more powerful than us. And so we kind of got to go along with them up to a point, even though we don't really want to.
And I kind of liked the tension between the Vulcans and the humans there in Enterprise. I mean, again, it's different than the other series, and I guess that's part of what I appreciated about it, because by the original series, humans and Vulcans are very tight, very close, very pals, and that's the way through the other series as well. And of course, in First Contact, you just have the initial meeting between Zefram Cochrane and the Vulcans, so you don't see that developed. But yeah, you could imagine where the Vulcans, who had a slower evolution, I think we're given to understand, they've been spacefaring for a long time. They're going to be a little concerned about the humans moving, from their perspective, too quickly. They're trying to slow them down, in part also probably for the Vulcans to maintain their own control of things, right? If the humans develop
they're control
too quickly,
freaks.
Yeah, they're control freaks, the Vulcans are, exactly. And so they're wanting to kind of keep the humans in check a little bit, while also being on, at least somewhat friendly terms. I mean, like, they're not going to war or anything, but yeah, they're going to put pressure where they can and be jerks about it from time to time. Well,
I guess if your first impression of warp capable humans is Zefram Cochrane, that might actually color you.
That is true. We can't forget that part.
At least he didn't pull a gun on him in this time.
That is true.
Right.
One of my things always too is, why is it that the Vulcan ambassador is always dealing with an admiral in Starfleet rather than
a parallel ambassador?
Yeah, like the Secretary of State, or maybe even the Secretary of Defense, or whoever the equivalent of that would be on planet Earth, rather than dealing with the military command in particular.
The decision making here, like, the military or Starfleet, whatever you want to, they're essentially quasi-military at least, are making all of these decisions for Earth. I would rather see this happen, at a higher level, the civilian authority. Stargate has the same problem. So often you see the General Hammond making decisions about relationships with alien species, when you're going, that's really something a president would do. Like, so it's not limited to Star Trek as an issue. So I get that, and I get why. You don't want to always have him on the phone talking to somebody elsewhere, making decisions. You want to limit the size of your cast and the time it takes, all that sort of stuff. I get that, but it does raise these issues, and it makes you think, okay, yeah, that's not actually, if it were real, that's not actually how that would work. But that's fine.
What they could have done is create a liaison character and make the liaison character part of the regular cast. So not a guest liaison who comes in that everyone's going to hate.
Right.
Because when a guest liaison comes in, they're going to try to use them to exploit extra drama.
Right.
But instead, having a regular cast member who is the Stargate governmental liaison, who's there to talk to the aliens and knows the parameters of, what the president has agreed to, and when situations arise that fall outside of that, he's like, okay, I'm gonna have to check with my boss, but I'm a part of the team. I'm trying to do what the team wants done.
Right.
And so the liaison would be viewed as a good character rather than a character you're meant to hate.
In Star Trek, especially in all the series, really, it's a series of admirals. It's always some admiral that is your connection to the higher authority.
And they're almost always bad. It's the Star Trek admiral problem.
Yeah. There was the one good admiral in DS9 during the war.
I remember his face. I'm not remembering.
Yeah.
And he was a regular.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was there all the time. He was on our side. Yeah, that's the difference. You're right, Jimmy. It would be better to have a character like that.
No, Admiral Forrest never really turns bad, does he? Or am I forgetting something? Okay.
No, I don't think so. I think he and again, that's actually
back.
Yeah, and that's a good aspect of Enterprise, and the way that we work with that is we have a good admiral who is his liaison. Sometimes he has to deliver bad news or hard news, but still, they're working together. They're on the same team. They're on the same side, and I do like that. One of the things about the future library I kind of enjoyed was as they're going through, and Archer finds a book, The Romulan Star Empire. Yeah. Which Daniels is quick to go, you don't need to look at that. Right, because this is the first mention of Romulans in Enterprise. We will have encounters with Romulan vessels, but of course we can't see Romulans until Balance of Terror in the original series. And then Discovery decides to throw that out. But nevertheless, we don't see Romulans in this.
And when they get to the library too, there was that line of Daniels, there aren't supposed to be books here in this library. It was supposed to be electronic, right? But the timeline is shifted. They don't have all the electronic records. Instead, they have good old-fashioned paper books.
Why do you have a library if everything's electronic then?
Yeah, that's what you have an internet for.
Right.
Exactly. And they had the internet in 2000, two this was?
Also, there's another problem with the books, because if it was the disruption of the Federation forming that caused the alternate timeline, why would that affect their technology so that they were using paper books instead of data retrieval systems?
I'm thinking it was supposed, and this is a guess on my part, I think they were implying...
Otherwise, you wouldn't have a volume on the Romulan Star Empire.
I guess they were implying that whatever happened sometime before that transition away from having paper books.
Yeah.
But after...
now-ish.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Either that or the disruption was so bad that we regressed, and instead of having a lot of electronic books and electronic information, we started printing more books and reading that way for a while before everything just totally fell apart.
Lucky that whatever happened, they still built the building that Daniels and Archer appeared came to, and they didn't appear in the midair where the building was. But
Yeah. Also, by the way, I'll just note the library scene is also a visual reference to the 1970s movie Logan's Run, where after Logan and Jessica escape from the city of Domes, they go to the Library of Congress in Washington, and they meet an old man who's the first old man they've ever seen.
Yeah.
And so you have this great ruined library, and they're visually drawn from that in this.
Right. Yeah, the library looked a lot like the New York Public Library of today, but not exactly the same thing. But I'm guessing they were inspired by it.
By the way, one little thing that popped me out of the story in this sequence is, so the problem is they don't have any time machine, and so because of this alternate future, and so Daniels has no way to get Archer back to where he belongs. And so what they come up with is, well, okay, in the 2700s, even though they didn't have time travel technology, the other faction in the temporal Cold War figured out how to send messages through time. And so maybe we could do the same thing using Archer's communicator, and he's also got a scanner, I think, like a tricorder or something on it. Tricorder. And Daniels says he can cobble these things together to create a way to, using the principles from the 2700s, to send a message back. And so, okay, fine, but Daniels is from the 3000s, and Archer is from the from
2100s.
2100. So that's like 900 years ago. If you gave me a device from 900 years ago, I don't know that I would know how to do anything with it. And admittedly, technology was simpler, but they did have mechanical devices back then, and I wouldn't know how to use them.
Right.
I guess I can headcanon that on Daniels was briefed and trained for this mission since he was working on board the Enterprise. Mm-hmm. So they'd given him special training in the devices of the day. It just popped me out of the story, and it could strain credulity a little bit that he would know how to use them so well that he could reconfigure their innards to do this. But, that could be part of his training too. If you're ever stranded, you need to send a message back to the 30th century. Here's how you do it using a communicator and a tricorder.
Yeah, that one kind of pulled me out because I'm thinking, even if if I got a radio from 100 years ago, could I turn it into using, what I could find? Could I turn it into a satellite communication device? Which I feel like is kind of similar. Like, no. And I'm not sure I know anyone who could do that, but maybe, I suppose. Well, also that we built these we learned how to build these in high school.
Yeah,
you're teaching your high school kids how to communicate across time. Isn't that a little dangerous? Yeah, that's like the time turner in the Hogwarts Castle. No. Anyway. I said my note was, he's building a temporal communicator from the equivalent of stone knives and bearskins, which is the city on the edge of forever. I thought it was interesting.
I like when they've been doing some kind of aggressive. While the Suliban are in charge of the ship, they have been interrogating T'Pol, and they've got her doped up on something, and they never say what, which is fine. But we can see the drugs being pumped into her, and she's dopey afterwards. And it's then that while she's in her quarters recovering, that a hologram of Archer's face appears to her and starts giving her instructions for what needs to happen. But initially, she's so out of it that Archer is explaining he's in the future, and he needs to know she's okay and stuff like that. And he's explaining that he's talking to her via this time device, and that, time travel is real because I'm here in the 30th century. and she says, the science directorate has determined that time travel is not fair. Okay. I like that line.
Yes.
They keep using, like at the end, where even though it's irrational, she's seen enough evidence she should believe in time travel. But at the end of the episode, after Archer brings her the good news that their mission's going to continue, as he's leaving, she says, "I still don't believe in time travel," and he says, I forget his words, but it's something like that. The heck you
liar.
Don't.
Yeah, you just liar. I think, and I kind of felt like she was doing it just kind of to kind of be as a tweak at him. But they use that line actually quite often in both of these episodes. The Vulcan science director has determined that time travel is impossible. I like that they keep bringing that up as we see everybody traveling through time, and because we know in the future that they will be proven wrong, which we love to see the Vulcan science director prove wrong.
Yeah, that's a nice aspect of this, showing that the Vulcans in this era are not infallible, and they're not always right.
And just because a bunch of scientists say something is true doesn't always make it so.
Yeah, and besides, you guys have faster than light technology, and if you've got that, you can turn that into time travel. Even we knew that in the early 20th century. That
kind of is time travel, isn't it? I liked how Archer begins to realize when he's in that 31st century library, his importance and Enterprise's importance to history. Although, it's the first Warp 5 ship. Of course, they're important to history. They're going out to places where humans have never been. But there's a humility about Archer where he doesn't quite get that why he's important, or that he is important, and how removing him from the timeline ruins the future, and it causes this. And I think it's an interesting moment for him to kind of realize the importance of the mission that Enterprise is on. So I like that development of the whole story of the series. Is that importance?
I like the way that Daniels is talking to him about the Federation, because that doesn't exist for Archer.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, he's as Daniels is looking around the wasteland, it's like, wait, there ought to be a big monument here.
Right.
And Archer's like, oh, a monument to whom? And it's not a whom, it's an organization. It doesn't exist in your time yet. It's called the Federation.
Right.
And Archer doesn't initially understand the importance of that. It would kind of be like if I went back to the, 1700s, to the American Revolution, and was talking about, oh yeah, there's going to be this United Nations thing.
Yeah.
Or there's going to be this NATO thing, and it's going to be really important 250 years from now. It's important to me coming from the future, but they're not going to understand its importance back then.
Right. Yeah. Right. So in addition to Reed taking a real beating in the Mission Impossible plan, the Enterprise.
And by the way, we in England, if I go back to the Revolutionary War period, we in England become best buds in the future.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So, no, that would have been weird.
It's like the Federations and the Klingons.
Yeah.
Or even the humans and the Vulcans from this series going forward, right?
Right. So they fake this warp core breach in order to get the Suliban off the ship, and Silic is distracted with the Daniels' device. Tucker really plays this one. He did a good job of playing this one up, like this warp core breach. Even call attention to it, where T'Pol says, your fireworks may have been a little too dramatic. There's going to be some bad scorching on that nacelle. So it looked really dramatic. They had to make the Suliban believe it. And they managed, he managed to really make this a believable warp core, but fireballs and engineering and stuff. So pretty wild, pretty dramatic.
Yeah.
This is just a little thing, but a technical slip I noticed. And it doesn't in any way, this is just a tiny little thing, but when Archer leaps out of the future guy cone looking thing, when he comes through the portal, he grabs Silic, who's a Suliban. And I've always been impressed with the facial appliances that they have on the Suliban, even covering their lips, with this weird green, textured alternate skin. They look good. I've always liked them. But when Archer jumps out and grabs Silic, he's like tugging on Silic's uniform, and it's apparently made, I don't know, spandex, but it's something stretchy, because he grabs him by the collar and pulls, and there's a moment where you can
Oh,
clearly see the end of the facial appliance next to his ripe pink Caucasian skin next to it.
Oh, that is funny. That's good. So Archer, at the end, when they're trying to argue for the continuance of the Enterprise's mission, he tells this weird story about the baby gazelle and the baby humans. How when a baby gazelle is born, it's ready to go out, and but humans, it takes us time to learn and grow. And I'm like, okay, I'm not sure this is the best story for the moment.
Nope.
It doesn't. It doesn't actually convince anybody. It's not him. It's T'Pol who actually gives the convincing, retort to the Vulcans, and kind of points out, yeah, you're mad because our actions ended up with the destruction of that, sacred monastery. Well, you're the ones who put the listening post there for the Andorians to find. So it's not our fault ultimately that your duplicity was uncovered, and eventually causes Soval to flounce from the room. I mean, he was he did that dramatic twirl and out the door because he was so mad.
An argument they didn't use is, so we've learned about this temporal Cold War thing, and we have now just learned that our Archer's exploration of space is critical to the future.
Yes.
To the formation of this future Federation thing. So if you slam on the brakes now and stop Archer's exploration of space, it's going to result in the same apocalyptic future that Archer just witnessed.
Oh, I could imagine Saval retorting that time travel is impossible, and whatever happened, you were just duped by the Suliban.
Understandable, but
But he could have made the argument.
This is an argument that would have weight with Starfleet Command.
Right.
That's for sure.
Do you want to see Earth be a wasteland in the future? Maybe you should let me continue exploring space.
Yeah, but they would say learning from mistakes is what being human is all about, and frankly, learning from mistakes is what every intelligent species is about. Because if you don't learn from your mistakes, you're not ascending up the ladder of civilization into space. Learning from mistakes is a thing that even Vulcans do. So,
but not if you're a Gormagander and you're born there.
Well, this is true. This is true. Or space slugs.
Yeah, space sea monkeys like Voyager encountered.
Yes. Any other? There was one other thing about Daniels. Just the fact that when they were in the 31st century, he started getting forehead ridges, and there's implication that at some point earlier he had said, "I'm human, more or less," and so it was they were apparently trying to imply that whatever genetic suppression of his non-human features were, so that he could fit in on the Enterprise in the 22nd century, were starting to wear off, and his true features were starting to come out. So that was just one small, subtle thing that they were doing, which, again, I appreciate the subtlety of that. Father, do you have any other notes on this one?
Nope. We've covered everything I had here.
How about you, Jimmy?
I'm good.
All right, and then let's move to the feedback. This is feedback we received on our discussion of the original series episode, Devil in the Dark, and this came via email from Wes, who writes, I enjoyed your recent podcast on TOS's Devil in the Dark. I've always liked this episode, primarily because I thought it was a cool-looking set. It gives the episode a unique feel among the other TOS episodes. I like the Cloudminders for the same reason. Sometimes things get a little stale when they just stay on the Enterprise the whole hour. One pet peeve of mine in Star Trek is when the crew waits so long to fire as the enemy approaches them, and they just let the alien kill them. You can see that in this episode. Keep up the good work. I listen to you all on my nightly walk. I really enjoy it when you cover the older shows like TOS, TNG, DS9, and Enterprise.
Yeah, and there is some non-strategic how do we survive this thinking going on in Devil in the Dark, where people do just kind of wait for the monster to creep up on them and kill them.
Right, or they stand in shock.
Yeah,
as it kills them. It's a thing you see in the period of the way that they shot and acted, directed and acted dramatic scenes like that. You see it in other shows like that or movies of the time. Yeah.
By the way, I just realized a huge plot hole that this episode creates that they did not address at all.
In Shockwave?
In Shockwave Part 2, yeah.
Okay.
So Daniels has been killed in season 1, and which is not a problem because he's a time traveler. But they sealed his quarters, and because he's got future tech in there, and that's what this whole how to get Archer back relies on, is Daniels having future tech in his quarters. And I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think that like in sealing his quarters, it was agreed that Archer was not going to report that to Starfleet because Starfleet is not meant to have this technology at this point.
Right.
But if you told them, guess what? We've got technology from 900 years in the future, including information about the next 900 years in one of our crewmen's cabin, they would demand opening that cabin and having access to all that information.
Right.
So if how did they report to Starfleet how Archer got back? I mean, they totally didn't address the issue of what's our cover story for Starfleet going to be? Because if we tell them, oh yeah, there's this Daniels crew member. Remember when you assigned him? Well, it turned out he was from the 30th century, and we've still got a bunch of his tech, and we used that to get Archer back. That's gonna radically affect the course of not only the series but the timeline. So big plot hole they didn't address.
Yeah, there's a couple of plot holes surrounding Daniels and the time travel and stuff that they just kind of drop at the end of this. They just sort of move on. I find it interesting, by the way,
they even drop Daniels himself. The last we see of him is in the library in the 30th century, and then boom, he's not in the rest of the episode.
Right, and presumably he goes back to his own timeline and doesn't even remember what happened.
Or maybe he does, like Archer remembers.
I guess, yeah. Of course, it's interesting to me that they do 2 time travel episodes in a row to start this season, because next Enterprise episode is Carbon Creek. So that should be that's a good one. That's a good one. So looking forward to that. Yeah, it's weird. Well, thank you, Wes, for your email, and thank you everyone for giving us a listen. We'd like to take a moment now to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Trek, including Justin R, Marg K, Timothy P, Brian S, and Jonathan M. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that is it for us from this time. What did you think of Shockwave, parts 1 or 2? Both, the whole story. If you'd like to comment, let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek, our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Send an email to trek@sqpn.com, or visit our Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. You can also watch the Secrets of Star Trek in full video. Watch us have our discussions on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia, and you can leave comments there, of course. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the original series episode, as we mentioned, Errand of Mercy. Until then, Father Jason Tyler, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Star Trek.
Thanks, Dom.
And Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thank you, and live long and prosper.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest, and remember, the Vulcan Science Directorate has determined that time travel is impossible.